Hello everyone, Meta527II here, and I am bringing you another commentary. And this one is going to be on a user by the name of Rowan Akamiya185. This guy seems to be one of my common viewers, and he seems like a pretty good person. Now, he recently did a commentary on my top 10 least favorite video game bosses remake. I enjoy seeing people do commentaries on me, as long as they're done right. But this one, well, no offense Rowan, but, well, we're going to look into this commentary and see exactly what I have to say. So with that said, let's get started.
Hey everyone, Rowan Akamiya185 here, and here I am with another commentary.
No offense, but do you think you could try to put some more emotion into this video? Because your voice is pretty much monotone throughout the whole thing. I don't know if you have control over it or not, but whenever I asked you, you didn't respond, so it's hard to know. And if you don't have control over it, then the least you could do is turn up your microphone or turn up your audio takes. It's not that hard. When I first watched this video, I had to have my volume on max in order to hear what you were saying. And when making this commentary, I had to keep turning up your audio clips whenever you refuted one of my points.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
You know that we're going to be in for a rough time when young Xehanort is only number 10 on the list.
Wow, even you admit that your least favorite boss in the Kingdom Hearts series is only number 10 on the list. Lovely first impression, dude.
Why does it matter that my least favorite Kingdom Hearts boss is only number 10? I just so happen to find 9 worse bosses, so why is that a bad thing? Besides, opinions change over time. For example, I don't hate the final boss of Yoshi's New Island as much as I used to, because I realize that just because the boss is an insulting version of a past boss, doesn't mean you have to think less of the original.
A few moments later.
Xehanort will constantly teleport around, throwing fast attacks on you that would make Meta Knight proud.
Is that really the best comparison you could have made with young Xehanort's fast combo attacks? Yes, I know, Meta Knight was OP back in the Brawl days, but couldn't you find something else who had even faster combo attacks than Meta Knight? I mean, Meta Knight isn't really fast outside of Brawl.
Can't you take a joke? Is it not so obvious that I was making a joke to you?
10 seconds later.
And if you don't break it in time, young Xehanort will use it to gain back a third of his HP and make you have to fight him again.
You could have also brought the fact that when young Xehanort regains a third of his health, you have to sit through a painfully long unskippable cutscene before you can fight him again. I know that A, you don't want to repeat yourself since you already said that 3 times in the past, and B, it's not part of the gameplay, but still, wouldn't hurt to talk about it.
Yes, I still hate that stupid long cutscene. I don't have to state that every time I talk about him.
12 seconds later.
Easily the most infamous boss in all of Mega Man, the Yellow Devil is rightfully hated by many.
Question. When you meant all of Mega Man, do you just mean the first Mega Man game on the NES, or the entire Mega Man series? Because, well, while I wouldn't say that the Yellow Devil is a good boss, I bet a lot of people would think of another boss worse than him. The Booming Trap of Mega Man 2 comes to mind.
I meant the entire Mega Man series. And besides, this one is talked about more often. Even so, the example you brought up is still from the main series.
A little later.
And to think, Capcom had the audacity to bring this atrocious fight back in some of their games. Why?
I don't know, but there are just some video game developers who just love bringing back bosses from previous games, whether it's good or bad. And then, I guess Capcom here is no exception. Also, you were showing footage of the fight against Yellow Devil Mark II in the second game. That was a game that introduced a slide move.
When I showed footage from the third game, not the second, I was just bringing up an example. Besides, that's still no excuse.
A few minutes later.
That's like if the Zelda series had to keep bringing back the Water Temple. I mean the actual Water Temple.
This joke failed for 3 reasons. 1. The Yellow Devil appeared in the first Mega Man game. However, the Water Temple didn't appear in the first Zelda game. I know it's still pretty infamous, but still.
I know that you're trying to sound smart, but it's still a classic Zelda dungeon that everyone hates. So that's why I use it as an example.
2. I understand why you show footage of the Lake Bed Temple since it's also not a really good water level in Zelda.
Okay, fine. The Lake Bed Temple is a level you don't like. Good to know. That doesn't mean everyone will agree with you.
Moments later.
Now, I won't stop people for calling this the hardest level in the original Mega Man, but I just hope that people will stop questioning on how Wily is able to check on all of his own death spikes in that level without getting gore on them ever since Peanut3423 joked about them in the original version of his top 10 worst video game cliches list.
And what exactly does that have to do with the video? Hello? Are you gonna say what it has to do with it? I really don't understand what people like about K. Rool Duel and Donkey Kong Country 2. Now, please don't take that the wrong way. I respect other people's opinions, but I personally don't see what makes it so great.
Meta, we all have different tastes when it comes to different things in video games.
I clearly said that people don't have to agree with me. I was just saying I don't know why people like it.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
He also has that trick where he makes you think you won, but then gets back up. This wouldn't be too bad, except after a while it gets tiresome and only delays this awful fight.
Another question, how many times does K. Rool use that trick? Because like I said, I've seen footage of the final boss against him in Donkey Kong Country 2, and from what I can gather, he only used that trick once. After knocking it out the second time, he may get back up, but Donkey Kong frees himself and finishes K. Rool off. Unless you're referring to the first time K. Rool pulled that trick back when you fought him as the final boss in the first Donkey Kong Country game, but making that trick in DKC2 old and tiresome.
Okay, first off, what's with all that background noise? I understand if someone's doing something in the house, but it's probably more professional to wait until the background is quieter. Second off, he plays that trick on you twice in this fight, not counting the time where Donkey Kong punches him. The first game he only does it once, but here he does it twice. And lastly, even if it was only once, the amount of times people will die against him will make them have to keep watching the same scene over and over again until it gets more redundant. I remember saying this was a disappointing final boss back in 2011. Man, was it really that long since I last ranted on this boss?
Yup, 7 years ago, Meta. 7 years ago. Well, I give you some credit. At least you do look back on your own work.
I know it was 7 years ago. There's a term called being dramatic. Look it up. I've heard people say this isn't the actual final boss, but the fight with him in Crocodile Core is. I've heard the Crocodile Core fight with him in the post-game is much worse, but I wouldn't know since I don't know if I'd be able to get that far.
And by that, do you mean you don't know if you can reach him in Crocodile Core? Well, I wouldn't blame you since A, DKC2 is a difficult game, and B, getting to him in Crocodile Core requires finding and completing every bonus level in the game to get all the Kremlin coins and beating all the Lost Worlds level. So I want to ask, when did you start playing this game? 2011 or earlier than that?
Actually, I first played this game about 8 years ago in the summer. And I would understand you saying that even after 8 years I still haven't fought him, but maybe that's because I was, I don't know, busy playing other games? Well, I have nothing more to say about this part, so let's move on to his part 2.
4 to 6 weeks later.
As I've stated before, I hate the original Rayman.
Wow, Meta, I'm surprised that it took you this long for you to say, I hate the original Rayman. Ever since you started ranking on it on your top 10 most disappointing games countdown, it took you about 9 months for you to state the fact that you do hate the game.
And why does it matter that I didn't say the exact words I hate this game in those instances? I'm pretty sure that when I say it's one of the most frustrating gaming experiences of my life, that would probably be evidence enough. Even so, in last year's Q&A video, which was just 2 months after my games that aren't what they could have been, I stated that the original Rayman was one of my least favorite games I played last year. Also, that subtitle saying the name of the list doesn't make sense? It does make sense. It's a list of games that could have been so much better than they ended up being.
Now, I'm not going to bash you for not liking the original Rayman. As I respect your opinion, you do bring up valid points about why you don't like the game, and most of the problem you have with the game, I do agree with. You're just lucky that you got the PlayStation version, while I was stuck with the Game Boy Advance version, which isn't bad, but limitations of the GBA makes it just as good as you expect.
Thanks for the information. Now I just have one question. How does bringing up the GBA port refute my argument in any way? All you're doing is saying, so you hate this game, well there's a version of it that's worse.
More moments later.
First thing, look at her. Or better yet, don't look at her. Did Ubisoft really think that her ugly face would be a pleasing image for kids?
Her face doesn't look that unbearable. In fact, I argue that her body is a less pleasing image for kids. Besides, she had that face in your first encounter with her too. Unless you're trying to say that her face looks worse in the rematch.
Aside from the fact that her face isn't that bad in your eyes, I never said she wasn't ugly in the first fight. I was just bringing it up as a factor as to why this boss fight is so bad. It's not even ugly in a classic way.
And by that, do you mean that's not even ugly in a Gruntilda way?
Yes, I mean like Gruntilda, and also like certain other villains who look ugly in a classic way. Like the evil witch from Snow White.
No to self, I'm telling that to someone who didn't even grow up with Banjo-Kazooie.
Just because I didn't grow up with Banjo-Kazooie doesn't mean I can't regard it as a classic. Wanna know what classic means? A work of art of recognized and established value. It doesn't say I have to grow up with it. She has an attack where she leaves behind all these exploding pots. You need to crawl your way out of them, but how can you possibly hope to crawl out of that in time? The diagonal ones are a nightmare too, because they make things all the more confusing, especially when she uses diagonal ones and horizontal and or vertical ones at the same time.
First off, be lucky that she doesn't use horizontal, vertical, and diagonal pots at the same time. Don't know if that would make you feel better, but just wanted to point out.
No, it doesn't make me feel better. All you're doing is bringing up a reason as to what could possibly make her even worse. I thought you were getting better in this part, but it looks like I might be pushing my luck with this.
Moments later.
Guys, quit arguing about shit I don't even care about, and get your faggot asses in the kitchen.
You used a 6-second long skip card to skip 5 seconds of my video. I don't exactly see the point of that.
A few minutes later.
Shadow of the Colossus is most well known for its fantastic boss fights. Now, I'm just going to point this out. You should probably learn to cut the video better. You basically cut out the S in the word shadow when you imported my footage. With bosses such as Phalanx, Avian, and Malice.
I thought that you're going to bring up that you weren't the biggest fan of the game, even if you did bring up Shadow of the Colossus in your last countdown. But nope, you just started the entry off by saying that it is well known for its fantastic boss battles. Don't know about you, but it's kinda lame to start the entry if you ask me.
I don't have to talk about the fact that I dislike the game every single time I talk about it. Do you want me to be a very repetitive person?
12 seconds later.
Next to Bassaran, this is arguably the most hated boss fight in the entire game, and it deserves every single ounce of hate that it gets.
Is the only reason you even brought up Bassaran being just as hated as Colossus simply because Peanut3423 called Bassaran the worst boss in Shadow of the Colossus, even though it's only number 10 on his personal top 10 worst boss fight he faced in video games?
Look up how people hate Bassaran. Plenty of people hate it.
A few moments later.
Oh boy, here's an unpopular opinion. You're seeing this right. I hate the fight against Giant Bowser in Mario & Luigi Dream Team. But why do I hate a boss that so many people praise?
Like I said in the K-Rool entry, we all have different tastes when it comes to different things in video games. Not to mention, least favorite is in the title of the video, meaning that every boss on this list is opinion based and not based on the views of the general consensus.
I never said that people can't like this boss. I was explaining my reasons as to why I disagree with the majority.
More moments later.
Despite that, however, he's still very frustrating to fight against.
I think the term very frustrating mainly fits for the second phase, but we'll get to that later.
I can barely see those subtitles because they blend in with the background. At least change the color or put them somewhere where they're visible. It depends on what video editing software you use.
Moments later.
And trust me, when I say that they're even worse in this fight, because now there are higher chances of you losing control of Luigi, sending him spinning into the lava.
What do you mean by worse in this fight? Do you mean the gyroscope controls are worse in the Giant Bowser battle? Because the only other Giant battle I've seen that incorporates gyroscope controls that doesn't involve fire blows is the Z-Keeper.
I'm pretty sure I explained what I meant by worse in this fight. I said it's easier to lose control than it normally is. There's another phase of this fight which isn't as bad because the problems aren't as prominent, but that doesn't change how terrible this fight is.
Would you care to elaborate on how the problems in the previous phases doesn't affect this phase? Because maybe just me, but aside from the gyroscope controls and maybe the difficulty in the third phase, I don't see how the problem in the last two phases translate to the third phase. Well then again, the final phase is the same finisher that is used in the other Giant Luigi battles, if it does incorporate the aforementioned gyroscope control.
Yes, the finisher of the last phase is the same, except now you have to dodge Bowser's fire during it. The reason I didn't bring that up was because it doesn't bother me as much as the rest of the fight.
A few inches later.
I can understand what people love about this fight, but this is one instance of unpopular opinions.
We get it, Meta. You hate this boss while other people like it. Stop hammering the fact that's an unpopular opinion.
I believe I only brought up the fact that I have an unpopular opinion only twice in this entry. Once at the beginning and once at the end. And that's all I have for his part 2. So let's finish this on his final part. Wait, you mean part 3 still isn't the final part? Oh, come on! I feel like you're outright trying to point out anything in my countdown that could even remotely be considered a problem. I don't know if that's the case or not, but if you had understood this, this commentary probably wouldn't have been nearly as long as it currently is. Commentaries aren't about trying to make as many counterpoints as you can. They're about actually pointing out what you think are actual problems. So let's see how long until his next part comes out.
One eternity later.
Everyone hates Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon because of how, despite being the so-called superior versions, they mess up some things that made the first Sun and Moon so awesome.
I'm looking at the ratings of the games in this screenshot right here, and I can safely say that what you just said was nothing more than a hyperbole.
Yes, the game got good critic scores. But critic scores and fan reception are not the same thing. Movies like Sponge Out of Water and Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull are both movies that have gotten a few high scores, but people around the world hate them.
A little later.
While I like these two more than I should,
I don't have a problem with you disagreeing on the haters on the games, but if you're going to say that the games aren't really well received, then maybe you should have second thought about putting the games on number 1 on your top playing games you first played in 2017 list.
I cannot believe you said that. I said I like these games more than I should. That doesn't mean I have no right to have them at the top of my 2017 games list. Also, the next part contains spoilers from Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so I'm gonna put up a subtitle saying where to skip to.
A little later.
Albeit not as much as the previously mentioned predecessors, I do agree on some complaints.
Is making Lucamine confusing one of them?
Okay, and what exactly does Lucamine being a confusing villain refute my point in any way? All you're saying is that, oh, is that one of those examples? That doesn't at all counter any of my points.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
You want to know what its base stat total is? 754. Guess we should just forget about Arceus since the god of all Pokemon is outclassed by multiple other Pokemon now. This one not even needing any certain moves or hold items to transform.
Hey, at least it's not both Mega Mewtwo's, who both had a base stat total of 780.
Yes, Mega Mewtwo X and Y have better stats. So, that doesn't prove me wrong about how they keep making multiple Pokemon stronger than Arceus.
2 very boring minutes later.
Here's the boss that I'm pretty sure that almost every Metroid player will agree with me on.
And by that, do you mean every player of the Metroid series or this game? Because, well, I do agree that the fight against Mother Brain in both the original Metroid and its remake look like crap, but like the Yellow Devil case, I'm sure there will be some people who find fight worse than Mother Brain in those games. MB is a good example.
I only said they'd agree with me that the boss is bad. I never said they'd agree with me that it's the worst.
Moments later.
Dealing with the Metroids on the way to her is already a major pain in the neck.
Okay, I haven't been the original Metroid either, and honestly, I think most people, even some who grew up with the game, will agree with me. Nor have I been Zero Mission, but how about you just freeze a Metroid and then shoot it? Even if there are multiple Metroids pestering you.
Yeah, but the thing is, you won't always know when a Metroid is going to show up, so they can take you completely by surprise if you're not careful.
12 seconds later.
If you thought that the Game Boy Advance version couldn't possibly make this fight even worse than it already is,
The Game Boy Advance is a handheld, so it's going to have its limitations and screen crunch that will make certain things in the game they were making worse.
the Game Boy Advance version has capabilities that are far superior to the NES, because it was made like a decade and a half after the NES. Maybe if you're making a commentary, you should probably know about how video game consoles work. I'm sorry if I'm being harsh, but that's something that should be a given.
10 seconds later.
I know that you ran about that in the past, kind of like that unscrewable cutscene during Young Xenor's fight, but like with Young Xenor's case, it wouldn't hurt to elaborate here, especially for newcomers. Also, I didn't realize this until now, but this list also marked the first time you had a full detailed rant with Mother Brain.
What reason do you have to stretch out the word time? Haven't you ever heard of retakes or audio splitting? the latter which takes like not even 10 seconds to do.
12 seconds later.
The amount of garbage being rained on me is already too much. You really need to make an already bad situation even worse.
Please refer to what I said about the GBA having a limitation because I refuse to repeat myself.
You don't need to stop the video to talk about how you won't repeat yourself. That's something that people stopped doing years ago. I mean, I only brought up your quiet audio once, not counting this time, so that was enough.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
And I'm going to end the part right here. I'm going to be honest here. While I did say some stupid things the first 4/5 of the video, these 4/5 wasn't all that bad. They're not really that good, but they aren't terrible either. I bring this up because the last 2 entries on this list is really where this countdown goes downhill. Get ready, people.
Okay, so the countdown goes downhill in the top 2 entries. Question, are you going to explain how it goes downhill? Well, okay then. And the worst part is that we still have one more part to suffer through in this commentary. Well, at least it's gonna be over soon.
Tomorrow for sure.
While in Kirby Canvas Curse, this boss is a moldy piece of cake that's been left sitting on the table for a whole year.
Yeah, that's the point about the piece of cake that I want to bring up. Piece of cake means easy. In other words, since you face Pain Roller when you start playing Nightmare in Dreamland, you assume that him in Canvas Curse will be easy too. What I'm getting at is, think of a sentence that means hard, and moldy piece of cake is not a good one. In fact, I don't think it's an actual sentence, and if it is, I doubt it will mean opposite of easy. So, if you want to think of a better reference, try and think of 2 sentences that mean the opposite by the same subject. If you can't find one, don't put it in, and maybe just say something plain. That'll work too.
I'm sorry, but I can barely make out what you're saying there. You're saying something about my piece of cake expression not being good because piece of cake means easy and the opposite of hard or something? I don't know, so please stop ruining my jokes unless you have a way of making your point easy to understand. Maybe not so much on the 1st and 2nd levels, but definitely on the 3rd. This isn't your everyday ordinary boss fight.
First off, of course it's not an ordinary everyday boss fight. It's a minigame. You're correct, but that line wasn't necessary.
Okay, I actually do have an explanation for mentioning that this isn't an ordinary boss. I wanted people to be on the same page as me, because it doesn't look at all like a boss fight, so people would think it doesn't count. And I wanted to make sure they understand that it does.
10 seconds later.
And finally, why are you putting only a harder version of a boss on this list, let alone a minigame boss? If you're going to put the entire Pain Roller battle from Canvas Curse on the list, then fine, I won't mind. But putting a higher difficulty of the boss, if you find it hard, that's not an excuse, even if you want to rant about it so badly. I'm sorry, but in my opinion, you should either place the entire Pain Roller battle on the number 2 spot, or leave it off the list completely.
I can't decide if I should agree with that point or not, because it is technically the same fight, but it has much more puzzles in it.
Soon after.
The worst part of it, however, is that I still can't beat him. He's so far made it into my hardest bosses list, and when that's the boss that doesn't even feel the slightest bit inspiring, that makes me despise it with a burning passion.
Okay, what do you mean by uninspiring? I know what you're trying to say. The one boss you cannot beat is probably the most uninspiring boss you've ever faced. But what are you trying to say when you call it Pain Roller Free an uninspiring boss? Because the only thing you call uninspiring about the battle was the music.
By that, I meant that the boss was kind of random to be one of my hardest bosses. It's not like the mysterious figure in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, or Phantasma in Mario & Luigi Dream Team. It's just a random boss. I don't know how to explain it. And now I'll give you a major spoiler warning from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, since there are spoilers from that game coming up.
Eventually.
So you set foot into Elysium in the final chapter, you make your way towards this temple. What happened to my original audio? Did you turn it down? Did your video editor mess up? The fight with Neo was pretty bad.
Elaborate!
That was kind of an interesting usage of that clip. But I think that my points about not being able to level grind and having no backup during the Morak fight would help people understand that this problem exists in the fight with Nia too.
A few moments later.
Meanwhile, I had very little strategy to get around this since I had the best plays in the game, Pyra and Mithra, taken away from me, leaving me with the Pootisbird's cousin and no way of healing. The worst part of it all is that since you have your party members take
Okay, first off, I wouldn't got the joke you made about rock as if I heard where it came from, but I did not. So, can you elaborate about that joke?
Yeah, you don't know where my joke about rock came from. Not everyone has to understand the context to my joke. But if most people will understand it, then it's probably okay. And in response to where the joke is from, well, it's kind of a joke that fans make about Team Fortress, though it's not in Team Fortress itself. It's mainly derived from a small line in it. The worst part of it all is that since you have your party members taken away from you, and how helpless you are against the enemies that are around your level and give decent experience, it will take hours to grind a single level.
G-Sound7050 said this in his own commentary on Game 2, and I'm gonna say it here. Okay, I actually have no idea what you're trying to say right there.
You don't need to quote someone if it's a point as simple as, I have no idea what you're trying to say. And I can explain my point. At this point of the game, your best way to level grind is against some of the later enemies in the game, but the only reason it doesn't take you too long to beat them is because you have your party members to help you. So without them, those enemies take forever to kill. So that means it'll take even longer to gain a level.
Later.
Pin Roller may have been cheaper, but at least the worst fight with him was optional.
Exactly! Further proving my point, why level 3 Paint Roller shouldn't be on this list at all.
The fact that Paint Roller level 3 was optional is not an excuse to make something terrible. If you've played the infamous Lily Pad segment in Super Mario Sunshine, you'd probably understand where I'm coming from.
Later.
I'll admit, you did have some pretty decent choices, but some of the bosses you ranted about on this list is bosses that you've already ranted about in the past.
I hate to be a grammar Nazi, but bosses you ranted on is bosses you've ranted on in the past? I'm sorry, but yeah. And with that, I think I've talked about enough in this video. So, final thoughts? Well, throughout the commentary, it felt like you were just trying to make as many counterpoints as you could. And you also could have done a much better job with your audio balancing. And another thing, I understand if you have a stuttering problem, but if that's the case, then you should probably just edit out your stuttering. That's what I do. Well, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Rowan, I hope you'll take my advice. And to the viewers watching, please do not go to his channel and attack him. I am Meta527II, and I will see you all later.